Okay, everyone, so welcome. This is week 3. We have made it past weeks 1 and week 2. So somewhat okay. We had the quiz last week. This week, of course, we will have another quiz. So week 1, we went over sociology, what it is, what the sociological imagination is, what are social facts, public issues versus private concerns. Also, we went over the theoretical perspectives. So in that lecture, we went over the conflict perspective, the functionalist perspective, as well as the symbolic interactionist perspective. Week 2, we went over research methods. And again, this is an intro social class. So research methods is something we don't get heavy into in an introductory course. However, again, the tools that we use to analyze social problems through, some of the methods, so field research, interviews, historical analysis, all of that good stuff. This week, we're going into culture. So learning about what culture is, how is culture different from society, and how the two can't exist without each other. We're going to go into subculture, pop culture, counterculture, the aspects of culture, specifically 4, language being one of the key aspects of culture. Before we get into that, though, I do want to do and give you guys some housekeeping things. So in regards to emails, right, please try to email me at the school email. That is spierre@necc.mass.edu. I said to read the syllabus, and the syllabus states that clearly. It takes me a while to get to the Blackboard mail. Some of you have been using Blackboard mail, and I will respond to it weekly. Every now and then, my gut tells me to check it. Okay, so respond to me in the email address that I tell you guys to, which is in the syllabus. Okay, if you guys need, like a PDF document of the lectures, email me, but tell me what class you're in. I have about 10 classes that I'm teaching here, and they're all different. So if you just say, can you please send me the PDF for this week? I have no idea who you are. You are on my syllabus, so I know that you are in one of my classes. I just don't know which one. And I am not going to go through all of my classes just to figure out which document you're trying to ask me to send to you. It's up to you to be specific. Hey, Miss Pierre, I am in Sociology 101. Can I please have the PDF for this week? It's simple. Okay. I know CIT, that is our computer services, is trying to figure out why my announcements are going to spam and junk mail. Check your spam and junk mail folders. That's where I guess my Blackboards are kind of like directed to. Other than that, this week you have to read chapter 3. Again, I post up lectures for those of you who would like to listen to the lecture live. Of course, it's pre-recorded, but some of you might need that, so I give you that. You also have a quiz that is due on Friday night at 11:59 p.m. And quizzes are always in all of my classes, regardless of social or not. They're always due on Friday at 11:59 p.m. So let's get started with our lecture on culture. Okay, so you should be able to see this, and of course, as usual, you have access to this particular PowerPoint slide. Okay, so chapter 3 obviously is on culture. Okay, people adhere to various rules and standards that are created and maintained in culture, such as giving a high five to someone. How do we learn you know, some of these gestures, some of these movements? How do we know whether or not to say bless you in certain circumstances? How do we know when we enter someone's house whether or not to kiss them on the cheek or simply just say hello, right? We learn these things in different cultures, okay, through different cultures, and also through and within the society that we are specifically living in. Okay, but what is culture? Okay, we all adhere to various rules and standards that are created and maintained in society. These rules and expectations have meaning in society as well. But first, before we get into culture, what is a society and how do we define that? Okay. Society is defined as a group of people who share a community and a culture. Okay. Again, society is defined as a group of people who share a community and a culture. When we say community, we are talking about a definable region. So that region could be a neighborhood, it could be a county, it could be a city, or somewhere and something in between that. Okay. But by culture, remember, society is a group of people who share community and a culture. By culture, we mean the shared beliefs, the shared values, the shared practices that citizens, that we must learn. Okay? That's culture. The shared beliefs, the shared values, practices that participants must learn. Okay? So your book is going to oftentimes give us figures, give us illustrations, give us pictures, and don't just glance over those in the book, okay? They're there for a reason. They're there to get you to think beyond. They're there to get you to use your sociological imagination. Here, right? How would a visitor from the suburban United States act and feel on a crowded Tokyo train? Okay. If any of you have ever taken the MBTA system, specifically the train system in Massachusetts, and I'm going to, just include all the train systems. So the blue line, the red line, the orange line, the commuter rail, okay? Most of the time, our trains, I'm not considering rush hour, even during rush hour, most of the time we require a certain amount of space. We kind of just grow up in an environment, we grow up in a society, we grow up in a community, right? Where we learn that specifically on our subway system, specifically on our busing system, that people require a certain amount of distance, okay? It's not necessarily spoken, but we know it. Okay. Now, imagine going and visiting Tokyo. Okay. I don't want to necessarily think about how you would feel, right? But what would you do? Okay. Most of us, I know if I visited Tokyo, I would adjust. Okay. I don't like anybody, breathing down my neck. But as an outsider to that community, to that society, right? I must learn, I must adjust. Okay? I mean, for instance, imagine you as an American, most of you are, right? You as an American going to Luxembourg, right? In Luxembourg, they speak Luxembourgish, they speak German, they speak French, and occasionally you can find an English speaker or so, okay? And I had to learn this the hard way, okay? I'm expecting everybody to speak English in Luxembourg, okay? However, going over there, even as a visitor every couple of months, I had to adjust. Nobody necessarily, verbally said, you must adapt to our culture, but through norms, which we will discuss, through different types of gestures, through different types of values that I picked up out there, right? I learned German. I learned Luxembourgish, okay? Very similar, okay? So now, right, like when I go to a grocery store in Luxembourg, I'm not speaking English. I'm speaking French, Luxembourgish, or German, okay? So as a visitor in that country, how would you act? How would you feel? Out of place in the beginning, definitely out of place, right? But you learn. You learn the culture. You learn the values. You learn the shared beliefs. Okay? Whether or not you agree with them. Okay? We learn dominant ways of society through what we call norms in sociology. Norms are defined as the standard that define the obligations and the expected behaviors of people in various situations. Okay. Later on in this slide, we're going to revisit norms again, and we're specifically going to revisit norms in terms of informal and formal norms. But there are different ways to classify different types of norms. We have folkways, mores, and laws. So norms, again, are just the standards that define the expected, the obliged behaviors of people in various situations. Okay, these are expected of you. We have norms that we consider folkways, norms that we consider mores, norms that we consider laws, etc. Okay, let's start off with laws, right, which is at the bottom because laws are just easier to define. Laws are also a formal type of norm, meaning that they are written down, okay? We know laws, okay? For instance, we have laws when it comes to littering, okay? You cannot throw trash out of your car window. Why? Because there is a fine. Okay, you will get stopped and there is a fine if there is a police officer near you. Okay? When it comes to the type of norm known as a law, these are behaviors, these are obligations that you must abide by or you must not do. Okay? So these are the most formal types of norms, laws. Okay? So you must absolutely follow these types of norms we know as laws. If you do not, right, reprimands or punishments can be as severe as imprisonment or incarceration, and even death. Okay. Of course, you can have the other types of severe ones too: probation, parole, expulsion, things like that. Okay. Folkways are our least formal type of norms. Okay. These are norms that you should abide by. Okay. They're informal. Okay. They're the least formal, and we can also classify folkways as informal laws. They're not informal norms. They are not written down in society, okay? These are things that we learn. These types of norms we can learn through all different types of agents of transmission. We can learn them through our parents, through our friends and peers, through our experiences within the educational system, religious institutions, the state, etc. But they're not written down, okay? So for instance, an example of a folkway would be here, okay? I'm lecturing to you guys on this computer, okay? And then I start just picking and digging at my nose, okay? Now, if I was face to face in class and then I started picking and digging at my nose, right? It's not written down anywhere in society that I can't. Remember, it's informal, okay? However, do we know as a community that we shouldn't pick our nose in public? Yeah, we know that. So the way someone might reprimand me, and I'm putting quotes around it because usually when it comes to folkways, we kind of just brush them off or give people stares. So the most that I would get if I was digging at my nose in front of a class would be like the students being like, really? Like not even saying anything, but like, okay. So the folkway is our least formal type of norm. It's an informal norm. It's, a type of norm that we should or should not abide by. Okay. However, there is no severe type of reprimand or punishment for not following a folkway. Okay. So there's little to none. Now, the more, which is another type of another type of norm, falls in between folkways and laws. So it's more formal than a folkway, but less formal than a law. These are norms that you absolutely should abide by or absolutely should not abide by. Okay? However, they're not laws. These types of norms, known as mores, are not written down either. Okay? So, the difference between the folkway and the law here, the difference between the folkway and the more here is that with a more, there might be a slightly more severe type of reaction or punishment or reprimand. So for instance, this is an example I came across like before, all right? So I'm just thinking about whether or not I should actually give this example, but I'll give it, right? Two men walking down the street holding hands, like in a community, okay? Again, there is no law in the United States that says that men cannot hold hands. However, if we're talking about the dominant culture in the United States, now I'm not saying I agree with it, okay? I'm a sociologist. I don't agree with, like this idea that dominant culture is the only way. But we do have a dominant culture in the United States that does not agree with two men holding hands, okay? And some of the reactions that these men got were really vulgar, okay? Like, again, I'm not gonna say them, but just think of, two same gender loving partners who are male walking down the street holding hands, and people who aren't really accepting of that, and the comments and some of the abuse that they experienced. Okay, a more you will get called out for by absolutely not abiding by a more, you will get called out for it. Okay, here's a clearer one. Okay, we know it's not written down anywhere in society that you can't cut in line. Okay, however, imagine you're waiting to board your airplane. Okay, and some gentleman or some woman comes in front of you, totally dismisses the fact that you were there, okay? What is something that you would do? I know I would, right? Excuse me, I was here first, okay? That's an example of a more. Whereas a folk way, you know, typically we brush those things off our shoulders or we give a stare or something like that. Whereas a more, you get called out for. Using your cell phone at the dinner table, right, is an example of a more, especially for you individuals who have parents who want to eat, you know, and talk about their day and talk about, you know, how their children are doing, and you're using your cell phone. And, you know, I used to be guilty of it where my mom like would call me out, you know, put that shit away. Or, you know, pretending she's clearing her throat, but in a way that says like, yo, you better put that thing away. Okay. Get it? So make sure you know the difference between the three. In many parts of Africa and in the Middle East, it's considered normal for men to hold hands in friendship. Okay. How would Americans react to these two soldiers? And the first example for a more, you know, I gave a slightly one, but in an American context. I think it would be very different. Has society changed? Has the American society changed? I don't know. I really don't know. You know, I do think that, and this is not just in the Middle East and in Africa, right? But in India, you know, men hold hands, you know, and it's for them, that's part of their society, that's part of their culture. Okay, shared beliefs, shared values, shared norms for them. Okay. However, I mean, think about this. Okay, how would Americans react to these two soldiers today? Okay, something to think about. Obviously, though, going through this discussion on norms and the three types of norms, right? It's different from country to country. Norms are different. Yes, there are some universal types of norms, okay? But there are many that are different from country to country. This is one, okay? Proximity is another one, okay? In many of these countries, proximity is something that's not existent. People are in your space. People are, you know, in your space. Here in the United States, you know, like we have the 6 feet rule. For me, it's 13 sometimes. I don't even want to be able to see you, okay? So think about that, okay? Subtypes of culture. So we went over culture, right? And we defined culture, remember, as, you know, the shared beliefs, the shared values and practices that a participant must learn. Now we are going into subtypes of culture. Okay, so there's non-material culture, and then there's also material culture. Non-material culture consists of the ideas, the attitudes, and beliefs about our society. Whereas material culture consists of the physical artifacts, the objects, and belongings, or the belongings of a group of people that define society. Sorry for that spelling error. Okay. So to explain non-material culture, I'm actually going to give examples of material culture first. Okay, because for some of you, non-material culture might not make sense right now. But I do have some examples of material culture. So here, an example of material culture. Flags are an example of material culture. We have the United States flag. And then for every single state in the United States, they have their own separate state flags. So these flags represent either the state, or the US flag represents America, okay? Style of dress can also represent material culture. Again, it's the physical artifacts that define a society. Do Americans dress a certain way? To many cultures outside of the United States, we do. Transportation is an example of material culture. Housing is an example of material culture. Your book gives a fantastic example that I should have actually included in the slide, which is money, the physical, money. Okay, and it doesn't have to be like just dollar bills, coins, and we'll eventually get rid of the coins, I believe, in 2020, but by the end of 2020. But dollar bills, and also like credit cards, things like that. Okay, so keeping the example of money, so either a credit card or dollar bills, those are examples of material culture. Okay, if we use that and we think about, well, we have this, that is, here's my credit card, think about the things that we use money for, okay? The system that we use money for, okay? Capitalism, that's an example of non-material culture, okay? It's the idea. Okay, we live in a capitalistic society, a society that is about this thing we call the economy. It's not tangible, right? Not like a credit card, not like money, but we all partake in it. Okay, let's use style of dress. Okay, so I'm a woman. Imagine if I'm wearing a dress. Okay? Just imagine if I'm wearing a dress. I don't care like what it is, right? I'm wearing a dress. That is material culture. However, we have attitudes and ideas and beliefs as to where that dress would be appropriate. Okay? That is non-material culture. Okay, so if you still don't get it, okay, a bikini we wear, or a swimsuit of some sort, okay, it's appropriate. The swimsuit is the material culture, okay. However, our ideas as to where it's appropriate to wear that swimsuit is non-material culture. Okay, I can't wear a swimsuit to lecture to class. Okay, imagine the stares that some men and women get. Maybe it's just faculty that do this, but when students wake up, like literally look like they just rolled out of bed and came to class. Okay, they're wearing material culture, but I have an idea as to where it's appropriate to wear that. Sound good? Okay. Another type of subculture are cultural universals. Okay. These are the customs, the practices, the patterns, or traits that are globally common to all societies. So for instance, sports, we might have different names for sports. Like soccer, I call football. I grew up in a household calling football, but soccer is universal. Okay? Golfing, etc. There are certain sports. There are certain types of body adornment. Also social institutions. Okay? Education is a cultural universal. Religion. And I'm not talking about branches or factions of religious institutions, but religion is a cultural universal. States, which when I say states, I'm talking about certain types of laws, are cultural universals. The institution of a family is a cultural universal. Now, we define it differently, but family is a cultural universal. Get it? Okay. Again, here's another figure. And again, don't just bypass these figures, but really think about them. Experiencing new cultures offers an opportunity to practice cultural relativism. Okay. So again, yes, you know, like, not all cultures are the same. We're smart individuals, hopefully, you know, like, hopefully you are, you know, diverse in your thinking, or open in your thinking, you know, open in, you know, receiving others, etc. Right? You know, so I would hope you understand that culture is not universal, but culture is what makes us beautiful. Culture is different. Okay. So for instance, I'm American, born here in the United States of America, right? However, I am part of a subculture, and I will get to that. Okay. I am part of a subculture. My parents were illegal for a time, but they were immigrants to the United States. Okay. I mean, some people still consider them immigrant, and we'll get into that discussion later. But there are different beliefs, values, norms that they have raised me with. Okay. Yes, I grew up in the United States, right? So definitely there are cultural norms that, of course, they're going to raise me with. But I have my own as well, right? And again, I think I'm lucky. I think that there are many of you who are watching this lecture right now who are lucky and know how to practice cultural relativism, know how beneficial, you know, it is to be open to cultural relativism, especially, you know, like, for many of you who believe in this capitalistic economy, right? Who believe in, this America, you know, making America great again. I don't care what you think about the slogan, but I think it's appropriate for what I'm talking right now. You need to be culturally relative for this country to be great. It's the only way. Our economy is connected to so many economies. Okay. I mean, I was stuck in Luxembourg for a while in March. And to know right now that borders are closed to America, whether it be to COVID or whether it be to our president, and I think it's a mixture of both, you know, shows you how connected when it comes to the economy we are. A lot of these economies, especially in Europe, have already opened. Their borders are open to each other. They're in a better position than we are. Okay. Again, a mixture of COVID, a mixture of ideologies surrounding the president. Okay. Another figure, some road signs are universal. So in some countries, you will see the same types of road signs. But how would you interpret the signage on the right? I can't read it. Okay. Another example of cultural relativism. I do think it's like a warning sign though. The yellow, or cautionary sign. Okay. All cultures have 4 common components: symbols, language, values, and norms. Ultimately, these 4 things cause either harmony or strife across societies. okay? And I think I'm going to specifically end this. I'm going to split this into 2 lectures. I'm going to end this one here, okay? But I do want you to think about something before you click onto the next lecture. So, symbols, language, values, and norms can cause harmony and they can cause strife in society, right? Now we're living in 2020, so I want to bring this to the present, okay? Think about how certain types of symbols, and symbols can be like gestures or symbols, reactions are symbols. Think of how language, right? How we communicate with one another can cause harmony or strife. Values, okay, what we uphold, right? What some of us would die for in society can cause harmony or strife. And then some of the norms. Think back to folkways, mores, and laws, okay? Because it's very, I mean, this discussion of culture that we are going to have in the next lecture is very, very important, okay? Think of some examples of how these things can cause harmony and strife, okay? I'll give you the first one and then pause, okay? We'll go on to the next lecture. We like to consider the United States of America a melting pot. I like to consider it actually a salad bowl, okay? And the reason why I like to think of it as a salad bowl is because most of us choose who we hang out with and who we don't hang out with, okay? So for instance, and again, I'm sitting in front of a computer. I'm not calling out anyone, but I'm talking about things that I've observed, whether that be things that I've read in newspaper articles, things that I've read online, or experiences that I've had out there. But one of the things I've become very weary of is speaking the other languages that I know, especially out in public. And I've never been so hesitant. I'm not going to say I'm frightened, but hesitant to do so. Okay. Now, there are certain languages that I don't mind. Like, I've never gotten yelled at for speaking French. I've never gotten yelled at for speaking Creole. And again, context matters. Usually when I'm speaking those languages, it's around people that I know, right? But one of the ones that I am very hesitant of is specifically speaking Spanish. My neighbors, both of my neighbors are Spanish, so like, it's weird how when people will walk by, we'll like, and then pick up, But language seems to have caused strife, okay? And it's not just two different languages. Sometimes it's the words that we have different meanings for, or we define differently, that are also causing this strife, right? So think about words that we use all the time in the media that might cause strife or harmony. Racism, instantly brings up emotions in certain types of individuals. I talk about racism all the time. It's a family conversation. I talk about classism all the time. I talk about sexism all the time, but for other individuals, it instantly, when you say the word, they go off. In this class, we're going to go over the definitions. Okay, so I always say, don't be so quick to call someone racist or something racist until you know exactly what it is. Okay, symbols and gestures, another one that can cause harmony or strife. Okay? Like coughing. I hate laughing, but coughing, you know, coughing, and I'm using that as a symbol now because I used to be able to just like that out there, as long as it was into the like the crease of my elbow, I was okay. You know, I'm not saying that it caused like harmony, like kumbaya, you know, but now, my goodness, like I can't cough anywhere. Okay, so think about that. I'm gonna leave it there for you guys, and I'm going to pick up with this lecture in a few minutes. Okay, it's divided into two parts though, but I'll be right back. Peace.